The millionaire's son sees a girl return milk at the till. What he does next, the price of shame. Insufficient funds. The cashier's cry shattered the usual murmur of the supermarket like glass crashing to the floor. It wasn't a discreet warning. It was a public condemnation, delivered with that biting tone of someone who enjoys wielding a small power over another's misfortune. Valentina felt the blood freeze in her veins. Her small hands, chapped and rough from the cold streets, trembled visibly on the metal counter. She clutched the tin of powdered milk as if it were her only lifeline in a stormy ocean. It wasn't for her. Her stomach rumbled. Yes, she had been tricking hunger with public tap water for 2 days, but that milk wasn't for her. It was for the only person she had left in the world. "Please, miss," Valentina whispered, her voice cracking, not daring to look up. Her eyes were fixed on her own worn-out trainers, split at the toes where her poverty peeked through. "Try one more time. Maybe the machine failed. I just need this tin. Just one." The cashier, a woman with a sour face who looked like she'd lost her patience a decade ago, snorted loudly, making a theatrical gesture so everyone in the queue would notice her annoyance. "Girl, I've swiped this grubby card 3 times. There's no money. Zero. Nothing. Do you understand? Or should I draw you a picture?" The woman slapped the card against the counter. "You're holding up the queue. There are important people waiting. People who can actually pay." Behind Valentina, the world seemed to have stopped. The air grew heavy, suffocating. She could feel eyes fixed on her back. They weren't looks of compassion. They were looks of judgment. Society doesn't forgive poverty when it interrupts its hurry. Right behind her, the imposing figure of Roderick loomed like a tower of impatience. Roderick was not used to waiting. His life was timed by meetings, stock market closures, and multi-million-pound decisions. Standing in a supermarket queue was an anomaly for him, a glitch in his perfect system. He was only doing it because it was his weekend with Julian, and his ex-wife had insisted he do normal things with their son. "Unbelievable," Roderick muttered, glancing at his wristwatch, completely oblivious to the human drama unfolding a meter away from him. He only saw an obstacle, a dirty obstacle. "Julian, don't wander off. Don't touch anything. This place is full of careless people." But Julian, at 7 years old and in his immaculate school uniform, wasn't looking at his father's watch. Nor was he looking at his phone. His eyes, large and observant, were fixed on the girl in front of them. Julian saw what his father refused to see. He saw that the girl's clothes were 3 sizes too big, as if she had shrunk inside them. He saw that her hair was tangled, not from rebelliousness, but from lack of a mirror and a comb. But above all, he saw how her shoulders subtly shook in a silent cry that she was trying with all her might to suppress. "Dad," Julian said, gently tugging at the sleeve of Roderick's perfect jacket. "Not now, Julian. I'm trying to see how much longer this spectacle will last," Roderick replied, his gaze fixed on the back of the girl's neck, with a mixture of disgust and boredom. "Excuse me, at the till!" Roderick raised his voice. His authoritative tone resonated above the hum of the refrigerators. "What's the problem? If the girl doesn't have money, get rid of her. I'm in a hurry. My time costs more than everything in this aisle." Roderick's comment was like a slap. Valentina cowered even more. She wanted to disappear. She wanted to melt into the floor and cease to exist. The humiliation burned more than the hunger. The cashier, feeling supported by the man in the suit, smirked maliciously. "You heard the gentleman, girl. Clear off." The cashier reached out and snatched the tin of milk from Valentina's fingers. It was a sharp, violent movement. "No." The cry escaped Valentina's throat instinctively. She tried to hold on to the tin, her fingers white from the force she exerted. "Please, it's medicine. It's for... I need it. I promise to bring the money later. Let go." The cashier barked, pulling hard. The tin slipped from Valentina's hands, the metallic sound of it hitting the counter and then being contemptuously tossed into a returns box beneath the till resonated like a gunshot. Valentina was left with empty hands suspended in the air, as if still holding the hope that had just been snatched away. It was at that instant, in that second of absolute silence where only the girl's ragged breathing could be heard, that Julian did something that broke the mold. The boy let go of his father's hand, stepped forward, invading the girl's personal space, and raised his right arm. With a firm finger, he pointed directly at Valentina's face. The image froze. Roderick looked at his son, expecting the boy, educated in the best private schools, to make some comment about the girl's hygiene or to mock her, just as he had implicitly taught him by example. The cashier waited for the final insult. Valentina closed her eyes, bracing for the final blow of ridicule, but the silence stretched, charged with an electric tension that prickled the skin. The blindness of ego. Roderick watched the scene with an arched eyebrow. In his mind, the equation was simple. His son was about to teach that vagrant a lesson about her place in the world. Roderick smiled arrogantly. Well done, son. Make a difference. Let her know we don't belong to the same universe. For Roderick, poverty was not a circumstance. It was a choice, or worse, a contagious disease. He had spent the last 20 years building a wall of money around his heart to forget where he came from. Seeing that dirty girl caused him a physical reaction of repulsion, as if the mere sight of her rags could stain his immaculate bespoke suit. Julian, that's it, Roderick said, with a voice that aimed to be pedagogical but sounded cruel. Tell her to move. Tell her successful people don't have all day to watch her cry over spilled milk. But Julian didn't lower his finger, and his face showed no mockery. It showed a painful confusion, the kind only children feel when they realize the adult world is broken. Dad, Julian said again, still pointing at Valentina, but this time turning his head towards his father. His eyes welled up with tears. Why is she trembling? The question disarmed Roderick's air of superiority for a second, but his armor was too thick. Because she's cold, or hungry, or scared. What do I know, Julian? It's not our problem, Roderick replied, snapping his fingers. Stop pointing, it's rude. Come here. Let's go to another till. I'm not breathing this air for another second. Roderick tried to grab Julian's shoulder to pull him away, but the boy stood firm on the ground with unusual strength for his age. No! Julian shouted, pulling away from his father's hand. The child's cry made several customers in adjacent queues turn around. Roderick felt the heat rise to his neck. He hated scandals. He hated losing control. Julian, don't make me, Roderick threatened, lowering his voice with clenched teeth. She's not buying sweets, Dad, Julian interrupted, his voice gaining strength, vibrating with pure indignation. You told me poor people spend their money on vices. You told me they're lazy, but she just wants milk. Valentina opened her eyes, looked at the rich boy, the boy who smelled of expensive cologne and soap, and saw something she hadn't seen in months. Humanity. Look at her shoes, Dad, Julian insisted, now pointing at Valentina's feet. They have holes, and she's returning the milk. She's not stealing, she's returning it. The cashier, feeling she was losing control of her own till, shrilled, Listen, sir, control your son. This brat is a top-class con artist. They always come with long faces begging for mercy. Give them an inch, they'll take a mile. Take the boy away before he catches nits. Those words acted as a trigger for Roderick, not out of compassion for the girl, but as confirmation of his own prejudices. The cashier was right. It was an emotional trap. These people always manipulated. Roderick took a long stride and stepped between Julian and Valentina, using his body as a shield. He looked down at the girl with a coldness that could freeze hell itself. Listen closely, Roderick told Valentina directly, without shouting, but with a tone sharp as a scalpel. I don't know what game you're playing to impress my son, but it won't work with me. Take your things, if you have any, and leave. You're bothering us. You're a blight on the view. Valentina lifted her chin. Despite the grime on her face, despite the hunger devouring her insides, there was an ancient dignity in her dark eyes. A dignity Roderick had forgotten existed. I'm not playing, sir, she said in such a soft voice that Roderick had to lean slightly to hear her. And I don't want your money. I just wanted my grandma not to die today. The sentence hung in the air. Your grandma? Roderick let out a dry, incredulous laugh. Please, the sick grandma story. What next? Do you have a lame dog? A blind brother? Spare me the soap opera script. Roderick turned to the cashier, pulling out his black leather wallet. He extracted a platinum card that gleamed under the fluorescent lights. Charge my things, and quickly, and for God's sake, call security to get this rubbish out of the aisle. The word rubbish struck Valentina harder than any fist. A solitary tear rolled down her dirty cheek, leaving a clean furrow in her skin. She nodded slowly, accepting defeat, accepting that in this world, being right didn't matter if you didn't have a bank balance. Valentina turned to leave, dragging her feet, but Julian wasn't finished. The boy reached into his beige trouser pocket. He fumbled desperately, his fingers closed around something metallic and cold. It wasn't much. It wasn't an unlimited credit card. It was something far more valuable to him. Wait! Julian cried. Valentina stopped but didn't turn around. She didn't want them to see her cry anymore. Julian ran to the counter, dodging his father's hand, which tried to stop him again. He reached the cashier and with a dull thud, placed an object on the conveyor belt. It wasn't just any coin. It was an antique silver coin, large and heavy, a collector's coin that Julian's grandfather, Roderick's father, had given him before he died, saying, "This is your lucky coin, champion. Use it only when it truly matters. Use it to save something you love." "Is this enough?" Julian asked, looking the cashier in the eyes defiantly. "It's real silver. My granddad said it's worth a lot. Charge the milk, charge whatever she wants." Roderick froze. He recognized the coin instantly. It was the only emotional inheritance his own father had left the boy. Roderick had tried to buy it from Julian 1,000 times to put it in a safe, but the boy would never let it go. And now, he was giving it away for a stranger, for a nobody. "Julian, what are you doing?" Roderick's voice came out strangled, unrecognizable. Fury and disbelief wrestled in his throat. "What you're not doing, Dad," the boy replied without looking at him. "Buying justice." The cashier looked at the coin with greed. Then she looked at Roderick, seeking approval to take it. Roderick felt the ground shift. His son was humiliating him. His son was breaking the rules of the game. Roderick's rage erupted. He couldn't allow that girl to manipulate his son to that extent. He lunged towards the counter to retrieve the coin, pushing Valentina, who had timidly approached upon seeing the boy's gesture. "Don't you dare touch that!" Roderick roared, flailing his hand in the air. His large, heavy hand accidentally struck Valentina's arm as he tried to push her away. The blow wasn't strong, but it was enough to destabilize the fragile girl. Valentina stumbled and fell to her knees. As she fell, her worn sleeve caught on the edge of the counter and tore. Something fell from her wrist. It wasn't a watch. It wasn't a piece of jewelry. It was a bracelet. A simple, hand-woven bracelet of old, faded red thread, with a very specific knot pattern. A pattern that braided 3 threads into one, ending in a small infinity-shaped knot. The bracelet landed right beside Roderick's Italian leather shoes. The world stopped. The supermarket noise vanished. Roderick looked down, furious, ready to shout at the girl to get up. But then he saw the bracelet, and his heart stopped beating. His breath caught in his throat. His eyes widened disproportionately, losing all trace of arrogance, replaced by absolute terror. It couldn't be. It was impossible, that bracelet, that weaving, that specific knot. In the end, there was only one person in the world who knew how to make that knot. A woman he had left behind 30 years ago. A woman who had promised him that knot would keep him tied to his destiny no matter how far he ran. Roderick fell to his knees, not out of humility, but because his legs simply stopped responding. His trembling hand reached towards the dirty supermarket floor to touch the red thread. Where did you get this?" Roderick whispered, his voice broken, looking at Valentina with eyes that no longer saw a vagrant, but a ghost. The red thread of destiny. Time. That concept Roderick believed he controlled with his Swiss watches and meticulous diaries, disintegrated completely. On his knees on the dirty supermarket floor, surrounded by curious stares and murmurs of disapproval, the millionaire was nothing more than a frightened child trapped in an adult's body. His fingers brushed the rough weave of the bracelet. It wasn't a simple ornament. It was a map to a past he had buried under layers of cement, success, and oblivion. That knot, that 3-strand braided knot, ending in an imperfect infinity, was the signature of only one woman in the world. "One thread for you, one for me, and one for God, so he never lets go of us," she used to tell him as she braided under candlelight in that corrugated iron house where the rain sounded like war drums. "It's mine." Valentina's voice broke Roderick's trance. It was a choked cry, full of panic. The girl, seeing that suited giant kneeling before her, interpreted his silence as a greater threat. In her world, when an adult fell silent and stared intently, the blow that followed was usually the hardest. With a quick movement, born of the survival instinct of one who has had to defend every crumb of bread, Valentina lunged to the floor. Her small, dirty hands clawed at the ground, snatching the bracelet from Roderick's trembling fingers. "Don't take it from me! It's all I have!" she wailed, scrambling backward on all fours, her eyes wide with terror. Roderick blinked, snapping back to reality. But reality was no longer the same. The bright supermarket, with its white lights and perfectly aligned products, now seemed a false stage, an empty shell. "No, wait," Roderick stammered, trying to stand, but his legs felt like lead. "Who gave you that? Tell me. Who made it for you?" His tone was not gentle. He didn't know how to be gentle. Desperation made his voice sound like a demanding, authoritative roar. Valentina didn't wait to hear more. Fear injected pure adrenaline into her veins. She jumped to her feet, leaving the tin of milk behind, leaving Julian's silver coin on the belt, leaving behind any hope of food. She only cared about protecting the bracelet. "Leave me alone," she cried and ran. She darted towards the automatic exit, her broken trainers hitting the polished floor with a frantic rhythm. "Hey, come back here," yelled the cashier, more concerned with the scandal than the girl. "Security! The shoplifter is escaping!" That word, shoplifter, finally broke something inside Roderick. He stood up, swaying as if drunk with shock. He looked at the cashier. That woman who, minutes earlier, had seemed an ally in efficiency, now appeared a grotesque monster painted with cheap makeup. "Shut up!" Roderick growled with an intensity that made the woman recoil and swallow hard. "Don't you dare call her that!" Roderick looked at Julian. The boy was pale, mouth agape, looking in the direction the girl had fled. "Dad." "She's gone," Julian whispered, his voice broken. "She left without the milk." "Not for long," Roderick said. A fierce determination hardened his face. It wasn't the determination to close a deal. It was the vital urgency of someone who needs to breathe. Roderick spun on his heels, ignoring the trolley full of expensive wines and imported cheeses. He ignored his platinum credit card still in the machine. "Sir, your card? Your shopping?" the cashier shouted, waving the plastic in the air. "Keep it!" Roderick roared without turning, grabbing Julian's hand tightly. "Charge everything, charge triple if you want, but don't make me waste another second." Roderick dragged his son towards the exit. The automatic doors opened, and the humid street heat hit their faces. The traffic noise, the horns, the chaos of the city, everything seemed amplified. "Do you see her?" Roderick asked, scanning the crowd desperately. His blue eyes, usually cold and calculating, frantically searched among the people, between cars, among the grey colors of the pavement. "There!" Julian pointed. About 50 meters away, a small figure in clothes too big rounded the corner, running with a slight but quick limp. She was heading towards the area Roderick always avoided, the area where the asphalt cracked and the city lights didn't reach. "Come on," Roderick said, and for the first time in years, Roderick ran. He didn't run on an air-conditioned gym treadmill. He ran on the hot concrete, his leather-soled shoes slipping, feeling sweat soak his 1,000-pound shirt in a matter of seconds. He wasn't running after a girl, he was running after a ghost he thought had died 30 years ago. He was running after the terrifying and wonderful possibility that his memory was playing tricks on him, or worse, that it wasn't. Where the asphalt ends, the chase led them far from the main avenue, away from the glittering shop windows and trendy cafes. They crossed an invisible line that divides all great cities, the border between those who have and those who survive. The air changed. It no longer smelled of fresh bread and burnt petrol. Now it smelled of stagnant damp, accumulated rubbish, and despair. Roderick gasped. His heart hammered against his ribs like a caged bird. Julian, beside him, ran with admirable resilience, driven by a mission he understood better than his father, to help. "Dad, wait!" Julian shouted, pointing towards a narrow alley between two abandoned buildings. "She went in there." "I saw her." Roderick paused for a second, resting his hands on his knees to catch his breath. He looked at the alley. It was a dark hole, a black mouth in the city's facade, walls covered in illegible graffiti, puddles of black water on the ground, and mountains of cardboard piled against the walls. Barely an hour ago, Roderick would have called the police if he had to approach such a place. He would have locked his armored car doors. He would have felt disgust. Now he felt a different kind of fear, a reverential fear. "Stay close to me, Julian," he ordered, loosening the silk tie that felt like a noose around his neck. "Don't let go of my hand." They entered the alley. The sunlight barely touched the ground there. The silence was dense, broken only by the sound of their own footsteps and the distant drip of a broken pipe. They walked a few meters, dodging broken glass and rubbish. At the end of the alley, where the path seemed to end in a blind wall, there was a precarious structure. It wasn't a house. It was a shelter made of scraps, rusted corrugated iron sheets, blue construction plastic, and wooden boxes. Roderick felt a knot in his stomach. The architecture of misery. He knew it. He had been born in one just like it. He had erased it from his mind, covered it with marble and glass in his mansion, but his body remembered it. It remembered the cold that seeped through the cracks, the sound of rain on the plastic. "Get out!" A child's voice shouted from the darkness of the structure. Valentina emerged from behind the plastic curtains, holding a wooden stick in her hands like a sword. She was trembling from head to toe, but she stood defiantly at the entrance of the shelter, blocking the way. Her eyes were red from crying, but shone with defensive fury. Don't come closer, she cried, waving the stick. I have nothing. I already told you I don't have any money. If you come closer, I'll scream. Roderick raised his hands, showing his open palms. Seeing such a small, fragile girl trying to defend her rubbish castle against an adult man completely disarmed him. I don't want to hurt you, Roderick said, his voice hoarse. He took a slow step forward. Valentina, that's your name, isn't it? Valentina, lower the stick. Liar, she accused. You're bad. You pushed me to the ground. You wanted to steal my bracelet. Get lost. No, Julian interrupted, stepping forward, letting go of his father's hand. We don't want to steal from you. Look. Julian reached into his pocket again and pulled out the silver coin. It gleamed in the dim light of the alley like a small moon. I brought it for you, the boy said, holding out his hand. It's for the milk. Take it. Valentina lowered the stick a few centimeters. She looked at the coin, then she looked at Julian. The child's innocence was a universal language she understood, unlike the cruel complexity of adults. Why? She asked suspiciously. What do you want in return? Nobody gives anything for free. Roderick swallowed hard. He felt his heart was going to pound out of his chest. He had to ask the question that had brought him running to this hell. The bracelet, Roderick began, and saw Valentina tense up again. I don't want it, I swear. I just need to know who taught you to make that knot. The infinity knot. Valentina frowned in confusion. She lowered the stick completely but didn't move from the entrance. No one taught me, she said softly. My grandma made it. She makes them. She says they're for tying luck, but... Her voice broke, and she looked towards the inside of the plastic shanty. But I think ours broke. She's very ill. Roderick's world tilted on its axis. My grandma made it? Your grandma? Roderick asked, feeling his legs give way again. He took another step, almost involuntarily, towards the plastic curtain. Is she in there? Yes, but she can't have visitors, Valentina said, blocking the way, again, though with less conviction. She's sleeping. She has a high fever. That's why I wanted the milk. She says she's thirsty, but water tastes bad to her. Roderick didn't ask permission. This time he couldn't. The force driving him was greater than any social norm or courtesy. I need to see her, he said. And it wasn't an order. It was a plea. Dad, Julian warned, frightened by the intensity in his father's voice. Roderick advanced. Valentina tried to stop him, but he pushed her aside with a gentleness that contrasted with his earlier violence in the supermarket. I'll just look, I promise. Roderick pulled aside the blue plastic that served as a door. The smell of sickness, stale sweat, and cheap medicine hit him. He entered the gloom. His eyes took a few seconds to adjust to the darkness. The interior was suffocating. There was an old mattress thrown on wooden pallets to avoid the damp from the floor, and on the mattress, under a gray, patched blanket, was a small bundle. A dry, deep cough shook the bundle. Roderick approached, feeling like he was walking on glass. He knelt by the mattress, not caring that the mud stained his designer trousers. The woman on the mattress stirred. Her hair was completely white, sparse, and matted. Her skin was like wrinkled parchment, clinging to her bones. She was consumed by life, by hunger, by the years. But then she opened her eyes. They weren't defeated eyes. They were eyes of a deep honey color, surrounded by 1,000 wrinkles, but with a spark of lucidity that defied death. She looked at the man in the suit who invaded her humble abode. She blinked slowly, confused by the fever. Roderick felt the air escape his lungs. 30 years had passed. Her hair was white, her skin was marked, her teeth were missing. But that gaze that had comforted him when his own biological father beat him drunk, that gaze that had given him a hot bowl of soup when there was nothing in his house. Tess, dear Tess, Roderick whispered, with the voice of a 7-year-old boy. The old woman frowned, trying to focus. Her bony hand came out from under the blanket and groped the air. Who? Her voice was a rasping whisper. I have no money, sir. Leave us. No, Tess, look at me. Roderick removed the sunglasses he still wore on his head, as if that could also remove the years of cynicism. It's me. It's Rod, Carmen's boy, the kid with the red tricycle. The old woman's hand stopped in the air. Her eyes opened a little wider, fixing on Roderick's face, searching beneath the well-groomed beard, beneath the hydrated skin, beneath the businessman's demeanor, searching for the child she had fed. Rod, she whispered, and a solitary tear welled from her tired eyes. The one who promised to return. The sentence fell on Roderick like a ton of bricks. The one who promised to return. Memory hit him with the force of a tsunami the day he left, adopted by a distant, wealthy family after his mother's death. He was 10 years old. He got into the black car crying and shouted to his neighbor, the only one who had cared for him, "I'll be back, Tess. I'll be rich, and I'll come for you, so you never have to sell bracelets again. I promise." 30 years had passed, and he never returned. Until today, when destiny had dragged him by the ear to this alley. Yes. Roderick bowed his head, and the tears he had held back for decades began to fall onto his hands, wetting the dirt floor. "It's me. And I'm late. My God, I'm so late." The weight of a broken promise. The cry of a powerful man is a sound nature doesn't expect. It's guttural, clumsy, like the creaking of a building collapsing from its foundations. Roderick, the finance shark, the man who wouldn't bat an eyelid at firing hundreds of employees to balance a ledger, was broken on the packed earth floor. His hands clutched Tess's worn blanket as if it were a sacred shroud. Forgive me, old woman," Roderick repeated, his face buried in the mattress. The smell of damp and sickness filled his nostrils, but it was the smell of his childhood, the smell of the truth he had tried to wash away with French colognes. Tess, with a titanic effort, raised her trembling hand. Her fingers, deformed by years of arthritis and hard work, sought Roderick's hair. She stroked it with the same tenderness she had 30 years ago, when he would arrive crying because the other children mocked his broken shoes. There, my child, there," she whispered with a weak smile that showed her pale gums. "Don't cry. Tears don't take away hunger or cure fever. They only clean the eyes to see better." Roderick lifted his head. His blue eyes were bloodshot, swollen. "I forgot you, Tess. That's the truth," he confessed, and the words burned his throat like acid. There were no excuses about work, or adoptive family, or lack of time. It was a naked confession. "I got lost in money. I thought that if I didn't look back, the past would disappear, but you were here waiting for me." "I didn't wait for you to save me, Rod," she said, and a dry cough shook her fragile body, making her chest sound like a bag of stones. "I waited to see what kind of man you had become. I wanted to know if that good heart you had was still beating beneath the expensive clothes." Valentina watched the scene from the entrance, with the wooden stick still in her hand, but lowered. Her eyes darted from the old woman to the rich man, confused. She didn't understand how that monster who had humiliated her in the supermarket was now weeping at her grandmother's feet like a scolded child. "Grandma," Valentina said, taking a timid step towards the mattress. "Do you know him? Is he the one you tell me about in stories? The boy with the tricycle?" Tess slowly turned her head towards her granddaughter. The love in her gaze was so intense, it illuminated the gloom of the shack. "Yes, my dear, it's him, the one I told you would come one day, even if he took a little longer than expected," Tess said, trying to add a touch of humor, but it ended in a grimace of pain. Roderick looked at Valentina. Now he really saw her. He no longer saw a vagrant. He saw Tess's features in her. He saw the same defiant chin, the same dignity in poverty. "She is?" Roderick began to ask. "She's Lucy's daughter," Tess replied, and a shadow of infinite sadness crossed her face. "Lucy died 2 years ago, badly treated pneumonia. We couldn't afford a doctor. She passed in my arms, just as I am going now." The revelation struck Roderick like a physical punch. Lucy, he remembered Lucy. She was Tess's youngest daughter, who used to play hide-and-seek with him. She had died for lack of money, for lack of the help he had promised. The guilt transformed into something heavier, something unbearable. If he had come back 5 or 10 years ago, Lucy would be alive. Valentina wouldn't be an orphan. "No," Roderick moaned, closing his eyes tightly. "My God, what have I done?" "Don't blame yourself for what you didn't do, Rod," Tess told him, squeezing his hand with surprising strength. "Concern yourself with what you can do now. I'm already on my way out. My ticket is punched." But she pointed to Valentina with a trembling finger. "She's all alone. She has no one. The landlord is going to kick us out tomorrow if we don't pay. They'll take her to a children's home, or worse, to the streets." The old woman fixed her honey-colored eyes on Roderick's. "Look at me, Rod. I don't want your money for me. I don't want hospitals or medicines that only prolong the agony. I want a promise, but this time a man's promise, one that won't break with time." Roderick nodded frantically, taking Tess's hands in his. "Whatever it is, ask me anything. I'll give you my entire fortune. I'll give you my house." "I don't want your house," Tess whispered, her voice fading like a dying candle. "I want you to look after her. Not to let the world swallow her up. To give her the chance you had. Swear it." "I swear it," Roderick said with a firm, solemn voice. "By my life, Tess, I swear it. She will never go hungry again. She will never be cold again. She will be like my own blood." Julian, who had remained silent by the plastic door, approached slowly. He knelt beside his father, saying nothing, but placed his small hand on Roderick's shoulder. It was a gesture of support, of validation. His father, for the first time, was a real hero in his eyes. "Grandma, I'm scared," Valentina sobbed, dropping the stick and running to hug the old woman. She curled up against Tess's skeletal chest, seeking protection where there was only bone and skin. "Don't go. Don't leave me with him. I don't know him." "Shh, my child." Tess stroked Valentina's dirty hair. "He's good. He was just a little lost, but he's found himself now. He's come home." Suddenly, Tess's body stiffened. Her eyes widened, staring at a fixed point on the rusty corrugated iron ceiling. A violent retch shook her. "Grandma!" Valentina cried. Tess began to cough, but it wasn't a normal cough. It was a wet, tearing sound. Dark blood seeped from her lips, staining the gray pillow. Her breathing became an agonizing, rapid, shallow whistle. From words to deeds, panic exploded in the small room like a grenade. Tess, breathe!" Roderick cried, sitting up sharply. He held her by the shoulders, trying to ease her breathing, but the old woman was drowning in her own fluids. "Dad, do something!" Julian cried, terrified. "Water! Bring water!" Roderick ordered Valentina, though he knew water would be useless. Valentina ran to a half-empty plastic bottle in the corner, but her hands trembled so much that she dropped it. The water spilled onto the dirt floor, instantly creating mud. "No!" the girl cried. "Grandma, don't die!" Roderick pulled his mobile phone from the inside pocket of his jacket. His fingers slipped on the touchscreen, stained with Tess's blood. He dialed the emergency number desperately. "Come on, answer, please!" he yelled into the phone. The signal was weak. 1 bar, sometimes none. They were in a black hole of the city, a place where even mobile waves didn't want to enter. Finally, the call connected. "Emergency. What is your—" "I need an ambulance now," Roderick shouted, interrupting the operator. "I have an elderly woman, severe respiratory failure. She's coughing blood. She's dying. She's dying now." "Calm down, sir. Give me the exact address." "I don't know the exact address. It's the settlement behind the North Supermarket. Enter through the alley by the abandoned factory, at the end of the dirt path." There was silence on the other end of the line. A bureaucratic silence, cold, deadly. "Sir, that's a high-risk zone," the operator said in a monotone voice. "Ambulances cannot enter there without a police escort. Safety protocol dictates we must wait for a patrol to secure the perimeter before entering." Roderick felt the blood boil in his temples. "Protocol? She's dying. I'm Roderick Montalvo. I have money. I'll pay anything. Send a helicopter if necessary." "Sir, it doesn't matter who you are. We cannot risk medical personnel. You must wait for the police. The estimated arrival time is 40 minutes. "In 40 minutes, she'll be dead," Roderick roared and slammed the phone against the corrugated iron wall. The 1,000-pound device shattered and fell to the ground, useless. Silence returned to the room, broken only by Tess's agonizing gurgles. Her eyes were glazing over. Her hand, still holding Valentina's, was losing strength. Roderick looked around. He was alone. His money was useless, his influence was useless, his name was useless. In that 13-square-meter room full of misery, only his hands and his will mattered. He looked at Julian. The boy was pale but not crying. He looked at his father, awaiting a solution. "Julian," Roderick said, with an oddly calm voice. That icy calm that precedes extreme action. "Take Valentina's hand. Don't let go." "Yes, Dad." Roderick took off his designer suit jacket, threw it on the ground over the mud and blood without looking at it. He rolled up the sleeves of his immaculate white shirt to his elbows. He leaned over Tess. "Tess, you're not going to die here," he whispered into her ear. "Not in this hole. I promised you, you'll have a clean bed, you'll have air. Hold on a little longer." With a fluid movement, Roderick slipped his arms under the old woman's legs and back. She was light, painfully light, like a bird made of hollow bones. As he lifted her, Tess's head fell back, inert. "Come on," Roderick shouted to the children. He carried Tess out of the shack in his arms. The sunlight in the alley blinded him for an instant. "Run to the car," he ordered. The scene was surreal. A man dressed in business clothes, stained with blood and dirt, running through a squalid alley with a dying old woman in his arms, followed by 2 children, one in a private school uniform and the other in rags. The neighborhood awoke. People emerged from other shacks, hearing the shouts. Men with hard stares, women with children in their arms. Some blocked the way, curious or threatening. In that neighborhood, a man in a suit usually meant trouble, evictions, police, or debts. A young man with tattoos on his neck stood in Roderick's path. "Where are you taking her, boss? What did you do to the old woman?" Roderick didn't stop. He didn't slow down. He fixed his blue eyes on the gang members with a murderous intensity. "Get out of the way or I'll kill you," Roderick roared. It wasn't an empty threat. It was the voice of an animal protecting its pack. Desperation gave him an aura of danger that money had never given him. The gang member saw something in Roderick's eyes. He saw madness, he saw truth, and he stepped aside. "Make way!" the gang member shouted to the others. "He's taking the old woman to the hospital." The Red Sea of poverty parted. People moved aside. Roderick ran. His lungs burned. His arms, accustomed to lifting weights at the gym, began to ache, not from the weight, but from the tension. Tess coughed against his chest, staining his white shirt bright red. "We're almost there, Tess. We're almost there," Roderick gasped. They emerged from the alley onto the main avenue. The sun beat down on the asphalt. Roderick's car, a black armored sedan, was badly parked on the pavement, with its hazard lights flashing, just as he had left it. "Julian, open the back door," he shouted. The boy ran ahead and pulled the handle. Roderick placed Tess onto the cream leather seats with exquisite care, not caring about ruining the thousands of pounds upholstery. "Get in quickly," Valentina hesitated. She looked at the shiny car, then at her dirty clothes. "I'll make it dirty," she murmured, conditioned by years of rejection. Roderick grabbed her arm and almost forced her into the car, seating her next to her grandmother. "I don't give a damn about the car, get in," he shouted, closing the door. Roderick jumped into the driver's seat. The engine roared with the power of 400 horsepower. He looked in the rearview mirror. Tess was pale, her eyes closed. Valentina cried silently, holding her grandmother's hand. Julian held her other hand. "Don't fall asleep, Tess," Roderick said, shifting into first gear and pressing the accelerator to the floor. "Talk to her, Valentina, talk to her, don't let her fall asleep." The car screeched its tires, leaving black marks on the pavement, and shot into traffic, dodging cars and running the first red light. Roderick gripped the steering wheel until his knuckles turned white. He wasn't going to the nearest public hospital. He was going to the International Medical Center, the city's most expensive and exclusive hospital, where he was a shareholder. "You're going to live, you stubborn old woman," Roderick muttered, tears streaming down his face, mixing with sweat. "You're going to live to see me keep my promise, even if I have to buy the devil's soul." As he drove like a getaway driver, dodging honks and insults from other drivers, Roderick felt a small hand touch his shoulder from the back seat. It was Julian. "Dad," the boy said, his voice trembling but full of pride. "You're brave." That sentence, coming from his son, was worth more than all the corporate mergers in his career. But Roderick couldn't enjoy it. The sound of Tess's breathing grew weaker and weaker. "Pray, Julian," Roderick ordered, his voice breaking. "Pray everything you know, because we need a miracle." The car accelerated even more, becoming a black metal bullet, cutting through the city's indifference, carrying within it the most valuable cargo Roderick had ever transported, a life that had no market price. The glass wall. The interior of the luxury sedan became a capsule of anguish at 75 miles per hour. The outside world was just a blurry stain of lights and concrete flying past through the tinted windows. Inside, the dominant sound was not the German-engineered engine, but the rasping, agonizing whistle from Tess's lungs, fighting for one more breath of air. "Hold on, Tess. Don't you dare close your eyes," Roderick shouted, looking in the rearview mirror every 3 seconds. His hands gripped the steering wheel with such force that the leather creaked. He ran another red light, narrowly missing a delivery truck that blared its horn furiously. In the back seat, the scene was heartbreaking. Valentina, small and terrified, held her grandmother's head in her lap. Her tears fell on the old woman's wrinkled face, mixing with dirt and sweat. "Grandma, wake up, please," the girl sobbed, stroking Tess's cold cheek. "Look, we're in a carriage like in the stories. We're going to the castle where they'll cure you." Julian, sitting on the other side, held Tess's hand. The boy, accustomed to a world where everything was solved with a phone call or a card, faced the absolute fragility of life for the first time. "Dad, her hand is very cold," Julian said, his voice trembling with panic. "Dad, she's getting cold. We're almost there, please, we're almost there," Roderick roared, sharply turning the steering wheel to the right. The car skidded as it entered the access ramp of the Metropolitan Clinic, a fortress of glass and steel reserved for the city's elite. There were no waiting queues or plastic chairs, There were water fountains, valet parking, and silence. Roderick slammed on the brakes right in front of the main revolving door, ignoring the ambulance bay designated on the side. The screech of tires made 2 security guards and a valet in a red waistcoat jump from their posts. "Sir, you can't park here!" the valet shouted, running towards the car with an annoyed look. "This is the executive entrance. Move your vehicle immediately or we'll call the tow truck." Roderick didn't wait. He kicked the door open and got out. His appearance was terrifying. A 1,000-pound suit ruined, his white shirt soaked in dark blood on his chest and arms, his hair disheveled, and his eyes wild with adrenaline. "I need a stretcher now," Roderick bellowed, running towards the back door to get Tess out. The valet recoiled, frightened by the blood. "Sir, what happened to you? Was there an accident?" the employee stammered. Roderick opened the back door. The smell of sickness and misery escaped the climate-controlled interior of the car, clashing with the sterile air of the hospital. He lifted Tess into his arms. The old woman was inert. Her head hung back like a broken doll. Her old, dirty clothes contrasted violently with the luxurious surroundings. Valentina and Julian got out of the car, running to follow Roderick. A security guard, a burly man in a tactical uniform, blocked their path to the automatic glass doors. "Stop right there," the guard said, raising a hand and resting the other on his truncheon. "Sir, you cannot enter with that person here. This is a private hospital. The public hospital is 20 blocks away. I suggest you." Blind fury seized Roderick. He had no time for the bureaucracy of classism. "Get out of my way," Roderick shouted without stopping. "Sir, stop!" The guard tried to physically block him, grabbing Roderick by the shoulder. "Hygiene and safety regulations. That woman is a homeless person, you can't." Roderick reacted with primitive violence. Using the momentum of his run, he charged the guard with his shoulder, knocking him to the ground. The man fell with a thud, surprised. "No one touches me!" Roderick roared, regaining his balance without letting go of Tess. The glass doors opened. Roderick burst into the lobby. The contrast was brutal. The lobby was an immense space, with white marble floors, soft classical music, and air conditioning with a pleasant scent. People sat on leather armchairs, checking their phones. Ladies with jewelry waiting for cosmetic surgery results. Everyone froze. They saw a blood-stained man enter, carrying a human bundle wrapped in rags, followed by 2 crying children and a security guard getting up from the floor outside. The silence was broken by murmurs of horror. "A doctor!" Roderick's scream echoed through the vaulted ceiling like a cannon blast. "She's dying! Someone help me!" An immaculate receptionist behind a granite counter stood up, pale, adjusting her glasses. "Sir, please lower your voice. You're scaring the patients," she said, trying to maintain composure. "You must go to the emergency room through the side entrance and fill out the admission and medical insurance forms." Roderick reached the counter, gasping. He carefully placed Tess on one of the beige velvet waiting armchairs, instantly staining it with mud and fluids. People around recoiled in disgust, covering their noses. "I'm not filling out any damn papers," Roderick said, leaning over the counter, his face inches from the receptionist's. His blue eyes blazed. "She can't breathe properly. I need the head of emergency care. Now." "Sir, without medical insurance or a prior deposit, we cannot admit homeless people," the receptionist insisted, looking disdainfully at Tess and then at Valentina, who trembled beside the armchair. "This is not a charity hospital." Valentina cowered. She knew that look. It was the same as the supermarket cashier's, the look that said, "You are worth nothing here." Roderick slammed his fist on the counter, making pens and the computer jump. The sound was like a gunshot. "Listen to me closely," Roderick shouted, his voice conveying power and menace. "I am Roderick Montalvo. I own the construction company that built the north wing of this building. I know the CEO. I play golf with him on Sundays. If that woman is not in an intensive care unit in the next 60 seconds, I swear to God I will buy this hospital just to demolish it with you inside. Did you understand me?" The receptionist swallowed hard. The Montalvo surname. She recognized it. She looked at his ruined suit, the watch on his wrist that was worth more than her 5-year salary. Fear changed sides. "Code blue in the lobby," the woman cried into the phone, her voice trembling. "Trauma team to the lobby immediately, VIP patient." "She's not a VIP," Roderick corrected, turning to Tess and taking her cold hand. "She's my family." The double doors at the back burst open. A team of doctors and nurses dressed in blue ran towards them, pushing a high-tech stretcher. The organized chaos of modern medicine enveloped the scene. "What do we have?" asked the lead doctor. A gray-haired man with authority as he helped Roderick move Tess to the stretcher. Female, approximately 70 years old, severe malnutrition, coughing blood. I think it's advanced pneumonia or tuberculosis. Lost consciousness 3 minutes ago, Roderick recited, surprised by the clarity of his own report. Oxygen! IV line! The doctor ordered. Take her to Trauma 1. The stretcher began to move quickly. Grandma! Valentina cried, trying to run after the stretcher. A nurse gently stopped her. You can't go through, darling. You have to wait here. Valentina struggled, but she was weak. She watched as the swinging doors swallowed the only person who loved her in the world. The stretcher disappeared. Roderick stood in the middle of the lobby, his arms hanging at his sides, stained with dried blood. His ragged breathing was the only sound. People looked at him, but no one dared to say anything anymore. The supermarket monster had transformed into something they couldn't comprehend. Julian approached Valentina, who was crying silently, and put his arm around her shoulders. My dad will save her, the boy said with conviction. He always wins. Roderick turned and looked at the two children. He saw the mixture of mud and tears on their faces. He felt the weight of 30 years of selfishness fall on his shoulders. No, he didn't always win. In fact, he had just realized he had been losing for decades. The thread that never broke. Time in a hospital isn't measured in minutes, but in heartbeats. 2 hours had passed. Roderick hadn't moved from the private waiting room they'd been moved to after the lobby incident. He hadn't washed, hadn't changed. He was still in his blood-stained shirt, sitting on a leather sofa, elbows on his knees, head in his hands. Julian and Valentina sat opposite him. A kind nurse had brought them juice and sandwiches. Valentina ate with a heartbreaking voracity, devouring every crumb as if she feared someone would snatch it away. Julian, however, hadn't touched his food. He just watched the girl, pushing his own plate towards her when she finished hers. Roderick looked up and observed Valentina. Now, in the calmer light, he could see the details. She had the same eyes Tess had when she was young, that mix of sweetness and steel. Valentina, Roderick said. His voice sounded hoarse, exhausted. The girl paused with the sandwich halfway to her mouth. She looked down, scared. The supermarket trauma was still latent. To her, this man was still dangerous, even if he had brought them here. Tell me. Roderick searched for words, trying to be gentle. The bracelet. Why did your grandma give it to you? What did she say when she put it on you? Valentina swallowed her bite with difficulty. She wiped her mouth with the back of her dirty hand. She gave it to me when Mum died, she said softly. She said it was so I wouldn't feel alone. Valentina reached into her pocket. The dress she wore had large, patched pockets, and she pulled out the red thread bracelet that Roderick had tried to snatch from her in the supermarket. She held it in her palm like a sacred offering. She told me a story, the girl continued, looking at the weaving. She said a long time ago there was a boy who lived next door to her, a boy who was always sad because his parents didn't love him. She said she made him a bracelet just like this to tie him to life, because the boy wanted to leave, he wanted to disappear. Roderick felt a shiver run down his spine. He remembered that night. He was 8 years old. He was sitting on the pavement in the rain, determined to run away from home, to run until his legs failed and let himself freeze to death. Tess found him, took him to her house, gave him cinnamon tea, and wove him the bracelet. As long as you wear this, you're tied to me, Rod, and I won't let go of you, so you can't leave. She told me, Valentina's voice trembled, that the boy left one day in a big black car, that they took him far away to be a prince, but that she knew he would come back. That's why she knitted. Knitted? Roderick asked, confused. Did she make more bracelets? Yes, many, every night, Valentina nodded. When we had nothing to eat, she sold everything. She sold her wedding ring, she sold the old TV, she sold her bed, but she never sold the red bracelets. She kept them in a shoebox. She would say, "These are for when Rod comes back, so he knows I've been waiting for him." Roderick covered his mouth with his hand to stifle a sob. It can't be. But Valentina lowered her voice, ashamed. Last week, when she got very ill and we didn't even have water, she took out the box. She cried a lot and went to the market and sold them all of them, except this one, which is mine. She sold them? Roderick asked, a lump in his throat. Yes. She bought medicine because I had a bad cough. She cured me, but she was left with nothing. Valentina lifted her tear-filled eyes to Roderick. She sold her memories of you to save me. She loved you very much, sir, more than anyone. She always said, Rod is good, Rod will come. The weight of the revelation crushed Roderick. Tess had not only saved him in the past, she had sacrificed the symbol of her hope, her emotional connection with him, to save her granddaughter. She had given up her treasure to give life. And meanwhile, he had been buying watches, yachts, and despising people like her in supermarkets. The magnitude of his own moral misery became evident. He was the poor one. He was the spiritually destitute one. That woman dying in a hospital bed without a penny was the real millionaire. "Forgive me, God," Roderick whispered, closing his eyes. Julian stood up and walked towards his father. "Dad," the boy said, "you're to blame for her being ill, aren't you?" The question was direct, brutal, unfiltered. Roderick opened his eyes and looked at his son. He could have lied. He could have said no, that life is like that poverty is complex. But he looked into Julian's eyes and knew that this was the definitive moment of his fatherhood. "Yes, son," Roderick said, his voice firm but broken. "I am to blame because I could have come back years ago, because I have all this money and I let the person who saved my life live in squalor. I am to blame for being blind." Julian nodded, processing the information with the seriousness of an adult. "Then you have to fix it," the boy said. "Not just with money. You have to really fix it." "I will, Julian, I swear." At that moment, the door to the waiting room opened. The gray-haired doctor entered. His face was serious, unreadable. He removed his surgical mask and sighed. Roderick jumped to his feet, his heart pounding in his throat. Valentina also stood, clutching Roderick's trouser leg instinctively. "Doctor," Roderick said, fearing the worst. "How is she? Tell me the truth." The doctor looked at Roderick, then at the children. "Mr. Montalvo, the patient arrived in critical condition, bilateral pneumonia, severe dehydration, and an alarming case of anemia. Her heart is very weak. She has suffered too much wear and tear for a woman of her age." "Don't give me diagnoses," Roderick interrupted desperately. "Tell me if she's going to live." The doctor paused, measuring his words. "We stabilized her. She's in an induced coma for her body to rest, but the next 12 hours are crucial. If she makes it through the night, there's hope. But I must be honest, her will to live seems exhausted. Clinically, we have done everything. Now it depends on her, and if she has any reason to stay in this world." Roderick felt his knees tremble, but he remained standing. "She has a reason," Roderick said, looking at Valentina and then clenching his fist. "She has too, and I'm going to make sure she remembers it." Roderick turned to the doctor. "I want to go in now." "Sir, she's in the ICU. It's restricted. I don't care. I'm going in. I need to talk to her. I need to tell her I kept my promise. She needs to hear my voice, to know that waiting 30 years wasn't in vain." The doctor saw the determination in Roderick's eyes. It wasn't the arrogance of money. This time, it was the desperation of love. "All right, 5 minutes. Just you." Roderick looked at Julian. "Look after Valentina. Don't let go of her." "Never," Julian replied, taking the girl's hand. Roderick walked towards the double doors. He was going to fight the most important battle of his life. Not in a boardroom, but beside a hospital bed, trying to convince a dying old woman that life, despite all the pain he had caused her, was still worth living. The whispering room. The sound inside the intensive care unit was not human. It was a digital symphony, cold and rhythmic. Beep, beep, beep. Each beep was a reminder that Tess's life hung by a thread as fine as the one she used to weave her bracelets. Roderick entered the glass cubicle. The air inside was sterilized, cold, scentless, a violent contrast to the human warmth and the smell of wet earth from the alley he had pulled her from just hours earlier. He approached the bed. Tess looked even smaller amidst the hospital's white sheets. She was connected to tubes and wires that monitored every beat of her tired heart. An artificial respirator covered her mouth and nose, inflating her chest with a mechanical rhythm she could no longer sustain herself. Roderick dragged a metal chair and sat down heavily. He didn't care that his once immaculate shirt was stiff with dried blood and mud. He leaned towards her, afraid to touch her, afraid to break her. "Tess," he whispered. His voice sounded strange in the clinical silence. "It's me. It's the ungrateful one." No one responded. Only the monitor's beep. Roderick reached out and took her hand. It was cold, full of age spots and old scars. Scars from stove burns, paper cuts, sewing needles. They were the hands of a woman who had fought every day of her life for others to eat. "I lied to you outside," Roderick continued, speaking with the urgency of someone confessing before an execution. "I didn't forget you because of work. I didn't forget you because I was busy." Roderick squeezed the inert hand, staring at the old woman's closed eyelids, hoping to see them tremble. "I forgot you because I was ashamed," he confessed, and the words came out like broken glass from his throat. When I was adopted, when I entered that world of private schools and houses with swimming pools, I wanted to erase everything I was. I hated remembering the hunger. I hated remembering the cold. And you were the living memory of my poverty. So I buried you in my memory so I could feel like a prince. Tears welled up again, hot and silent. I was a coward, Tess. I thought money would clean me. I thought if I wore expensive suits, no one would see the dirty boy from the alley. But today my son, a 7-year-old boy, had more courage than I have had in my entire life. He saw you. I only saw an obstacle. Roderick rested his forehead on the edge of the bed, sobbing uncontrollably. Don't die, please. Don't leave me with this debt. Don't let me be the villain of your story. Wake up and scream at me, wake up and hit me. But don't leave in silence. I need you to see that I can change. I need you to see that Rod is still here beneath all this rubbish I piled on myself. Suddenly, a change in the monitor's rhythm made Roderick lift his head sharply. The beep accelerated slightly. Roderick looked at Tess's face. She didn't open her eyes. There was no movie-like movement. But in the hand he held, he felt something. A slight, almost imperceptible pressure, like the flutter of a dying butterfly. It wasn't a strong squeeze. It was just a spasm. Perhaps a nervous reflex. Or, perhaps, just perhaps, it was her telling him she was listening. Tess, he asked, his heart pounding. The pressure didn't repeat. The heart rate returned to its slow, dangerous cadence. But for Roderick, it was enough. It was a spark in the darkness. I promise you one thing, old woman, Roderick said, angrily wiping away his tears, transforming the pain into steely resolve. Valentina will not be a statistic. She will not be the poor girl. From today, that girl is sacred to me. If I have to burn down my company to give her a future, I will burn it. If I have to kneel before the whole world, I will kneel. But she will have the life you dreamed for me. And this time I will not fail. Roderick stood up. He was no longer the man who had entered. Something had broken inside him, but it was a necessary break, like when a badly healed bone is broken again so it can heal straight. He kissed Tess's cold forehead and turned around. He had a mission, and he had enemies to face. But this time the enemies were not poverty or hunger. The enemy was his own former life, the price of redemption. Coming out of the ICU, the hallway was dim. Only the emergency lights and the glow of the vending machines illuminated the waiting area. There they were. Julian had fallen asleep on the synthetic leather sofa, his head resting on Valentina's lap. And Valentina, she wasn't sleeping. She sat upright, stiff, her eyes wide open, watching over the rich boy's sleep like a soldier. She stroked Julian's hair with an instinctive gentleness, humming an inaudible tune, surely the same one Tess used to sing to her. The image struck Roderick. Two worlds meant to be enemies, united by innocence, the boy who had everything, and the girl who had nothing, sleeping together under the neon light. There were no prejudices there, no social classes, just two frightened children seeking warmth. Roderick approached slowly. The sound of his hard-soled shoes echoed in the hallway, and Valentina immediately looked up, startled, shielding Julian with her arms. "Easy," Roderick said, raising his hands. "It's me." Valentina relaxed her shoulders but didn't take her eyes off Roderick's. She was looking for answers. "She?" the girl asked in a whisper, fearing to finish the sentence. "She's fighting," Roderick replied, sitting on the floor in front of them, to be at their level. He never wanted to look down on her again. "Your grandmother is the strongest woman I've ever known. She's resting." Valentina nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. "Are they going to kick us out?" she asked suddenly. "What?" Roderick frowned. "From the hospital," Valentina clarified, looking around. "The nurses look at us badly. They say we smell of the streets, and my clothes are dirty. They always kick us out of nice places." The brutal innocence of the question hurt Roderick more than a blow. "No one is going to kick you out," he said firmly. "This is my hospital. Well, a part of it. And you are my honored guest. If anyone looks at you badly, you tell me." At that moment, the silence of the hallway was broken by a jarring sound. Roderick's phone, which had survived in his inside pocket, the staff had retrieved it from the shack floor and given it back to him. Broken, but functional, began to vibrate and ring. Roderick pulled it out. The screen was shattered, but the name was clearly legible. Mark, senior partner. It was the call he had been dreading and expecting, the merger meeting. The £50 million deal he was supposed to close that very afternoon. The reason he had been in such a hurry at the supermarket. Roderick looked at the phone, then at Valentina, with her broken shoes and her fear-filled gaze. He looked at Julian sleeping trustingly. He answered, "Roderick, where on earth are you?" Mark's voice screamed hysterically on the other end. "The Japanese investors have been waiting for 2 hours. They're furious. They're going to leave. We're losing the deal of the century. Tell me you're on your way." Roderick listened to the shouts. 5 hours ago, that call would have made him break out in a cold sweat. He would have invented lies. He would have run. He would have killed to get to that boardroom. Now, Mark's voice sounded ridiculous, distant, like the buzzing of an annoying fly. "I'm not coming, Mark," Roderick said, with a calmness that chilled his partner's blood. "What? Are you crazy? It's the merger. It's your career. If you don't show up in 20 minutes, they'll sue you for breach of contract. They'll destroy you. Roderick, you'll lose millions!" Roderick looked at his hands, stained with dried blood, Tessa's blood. "Listen to me closely, Mark," Roderick said, lowering his voice so as not to wake Julian, but with a tone that cut like a scalpel. "Let them go. Let them take their money. Let them take the contract. I don't care. But what's wrong with you? Are you drunk?" "No. I'm awake for the first time in years. I'm awake." Roderick stood up and walked a few steps away from the children towards the window, overlooking the illuminated city. "Cancel the meeting? Cancel the gala dinner? And tell the lawyers to prepare the papers to liquidate my shares in the southern subsidiary." "Roderick, this is professional suicide." "No, Mark, this is a rescue. I'm busy saving something that is priceless. Don't call me again today." Roderick hung up and then did something definitive. He turned off the phone. He stood looking at the black device in his hand. It was his shackle, his connection to the world of vanity. He returned to the children. Julian was beginning to wake up, rubbing his eyes. "Dad," the boy asked, still sleepy. "Did we win yet?" Roderick smiled. A sad, but genuine smile. "The first real one in a long time." "Not yet, champion, but we've stopped losing." He knelt in front of Valentina. The girl looked at him curiously. She had heard the conversation, though she didn't understand mergers or shares. She understood the tone. She understood that this man had just said no to something important to be there. "Valentina," Roderick said, looking into her eyes, "I know you're scared. I know I'm a stranger who treated you badly, and I will spend the rest of my life apologizing for that. But I need you to know something." Roderick pointed towards the ICU door. "Your grandmother is going to get well. The doctors are magicians. But when she wakes up, you're never going back to that alley." Valentina frowned, confused. "But we don't have a home. The landlord said, if we didn't pay today." "The landlord no longer matters," Roderick interrupted. "Listen to me. You have family, maybe not by blood, but blood is sometimes the least important thing. Your grandmother was like a mother to me. That makes you." Roderick searched for the right word and found it in his son's heart. "That makes us family." Roderick took out his wallet. But he didn't take out money. He pulled out a simple white business card. He turned it over and, with a pen borrowed from the nurse, wrote a landline phone number. "I'm not going to give you money to leave," he said. "I'm going to give you a home, you and Tess. Julian always wanted a sister, and I need to learn to be human again, and I think only you two can teach me." Valentina looked at the card, then at Roderick. Her eyes filled with tears. No one had ever offered her a home. They had offered her coins, scraps, old clothes, but never a place to stay. "Is it true?" she asked, her voice broken. "Or is it like the story of the prince who left?" "The prince was an idiot," Roderick said firmly. "But the man who is here now isn't leaving. I give you my word of honor, and this time I seal it with this." Roderick extended his hand, not to give, but to ask. "Will you let me see the bracelet again?" Valentina hesitated for a second, then reached into her pocket and pulled out the red thread. She handed it to him. Roderick didn't put it on himself. He took Valentina's wrist, small and fragile, and with extreme delicacy, he tied the bracelet back onto the girl's arm. "This isn't just a thread, Valentina. It's a promise. As long as you wear this, no one will harm you. I will be your shield." Julian joined the moment, placing his hand over his father's and Valentina's. "And me too," the boy said. At that instant, the ICU door burst open. A nurse ran out, her face pale. "Doctor! Doctor, quickly!" she shouted down the hallway. "Patient in bed 4 is going into arrest." The world stopped again. The monitor's sound, which had been rhythmic, became a continuous, sharp beep, piercing the glass walls. Beep. Roderick felt the ground disappear beneath his feet. "No!" he cried, getting up and running towards the glass door, forgetting all his promises of calm. "Grandma!" Valentina's scream was a pure wail of pain that echoed throughout the hospital. The medical team rushed to Tessa's bed, Roderick reached the glass and hit it with open palms, helpless, watching them charge the defibrillator paddles. Charging to 200. Clear. Tess's body jumped on the bed with the electric shock. No rhythm again. Charging to 300. Roderick remained glued to the glass, watching as the only chance for redemption he had slipped through his fingers. Julian hugged Valentina, who covered her ears and closed her eyes, refusing to see the end of her world. "Come on, Tess, fight!" Roderick shouted against the glass, tears of rage in his eyes. "Don't you dare leave now. Not now." The miracle of empty hands. The continuous beep of the cardiac monitor, that sharp, monotonous sound announcing the end of an existence, filled the room like a poisonous gas. Beep. For the doctors, it was a technical sound, a signal to initiate protocols. For Valentina, it was the sound of her world collapsing. The girl covered her ears so tightly that her knuckles turned white. She curled into a ball on the hallway floor and began to scream a silent scream, choked in her throat, refusing to accept that the only light in her life was fading. Inside the glass cubicle, the chaos was choreographed. "Charging to 300 joules, the lead doctor shouted, sweat beading on his forehead. "Everyone clear!" "Stand back." Tess's fragile body arched violently on the stretcher with the impact of the electrical discharge. She fell back down, inert, like a discarded rag doll. Roderick, on the other side of the glass, pounded the pain with a clenched fist. He felt no pain in his hand, only a desperation that burned his insides. "Don't go, Tess," he roared, his voice distorted by the thick glass. "You don't have permission to leave." The doctor looked at the monitor. The green line was still flat, a straight road to death. "No response," a nurse said, her voice tense. "Doctor, she's been in asystole for 2 minutes. Saturation is on the floor. Come on, one more," the doctor ordered, though his eyes already showed resignation. "Epinephrine, 1 milligram. Charging to 360. Roderick couldn't bear it anymore. Logic, rules, civilization, everything disappeared. He watched them charge the paddles again and felt as if they were electrocuting his own soul. He pushed the ICU door open and entered. "Sir, you can't be in here," a nurse shouted, trying to block his path. Roderick didn't even look at her. He swept past her like a freight train, ignoring sterile protocols. He reached the bedside just as the doctor was about to apply the paddles. "Wait," Roderick shouted, grabbing the bed rail. "Get him out of here! Security!" the doctor roared. "We're losing the patient! She hears me!" Roderick leaned over Tess's ear, ignoring the chaos around him, ignoring the death that hovered in the air. He took the old woman's hand, that cold, calloused hand, and squeezed it with both of his. "Tess, listen to me. It's Rod." The monitor kept beeping. Peep. "You can't leave her alone," Roderick whispered, his voice broken by sobs, speaking directly to the spirit of the woman who had loved him when no one else did. "Valentina is outside. She's terrified. If you leave now, you condemn her. If you leave now, you break your promise. Sir, please." The doctor lowered the paddles, looking at the wall clock. He was about to declare the time of death. "No!" Roderick looked at the doctor with crazy eyes. "Give me 1 more second." He looked at Tess again. He leaned so close that his tears fell on the old woman's waxy face. "Mum." The word came out of his mouth without him thinking. He had never called his adoptive mother that, only her. "Mum, please, come back. I swear I'll be the man you wanted. I swear I'll take care of her, but I need you to help me." "Fight, you stubborn old woman, fight!" Roderick squeezed her hand tightly, transmitting all his energy, all his vitality, all his regret through that contact. And then it happened. It wasn't an explosion, it wasn't a lightning bolt, it was a sound, beep. The continuous beep cut off for a fraction of a second. The doctor looked up sharply at the monitor. Beep, beep. The flat line jumped. A small green mountain appeared on the screen, followed by another. Weak, irregular, but present. A sepulchral silence fell over the room. The nurses froze. The doctor exhaled the air he had been holding. "We have a rhythm," the doctor whispered, incredulous. "Sinus rhythm, bradycardia. But it's there." Roderick gasped for air and fell to his knees beside the bed, sobbing, burying his face in the sheets. He felt like his heart had been ripped out and put back in. "Stabilize the pressure," the doctor ordered, regaining professional control, but looking at Roderick with a mixture of respect and awe. "Dopamine continuous infusion, we're keeping her here." Roderick lifted his head, looked at Tess. Her chest moved, aided by the machine, but her heart was beating on its own. She had come back. She had returned from the edge of the abyss because someone had called her name. Roderick stood up, stumbling. He had to go out. He had to tell them. He went out into the hallway. He was dizzy, exhausted, as if he had run a marathon. Valentina and Julian were hugging on the floor. Seeing Roderick emerge, Valentina stiffened, bracing herself for the final blow, for the news that would end her life. Roderick sank to the floor beside them. He didn't care about his suit. He didn't care about his image. He was at their eye level. He looked at Valentina. The girl was trembling so much that her teeth chattered. "She's alive," Roderick said. Only 2 words. Valentina stopped breathing for a second. "What?" she whispered, unable to process the hope. "She's alive, Valentina," Roderick repeated, and a tired but luminous smile broke the mask of pain on his face. "Your grandma is made of iron. She came back. She stayed with us." Valentina looked into Roderick's eyes, searching for a lie, searching for deception, but she only saw truth. She saw the red eyes of a man who had cried. The girl let out a cry that was not of pain, but of liberation, and then she did something Roderick didn't expect. She launched herself at him. Valentina wrapped her thin, dirty arms around Roderick's neck and buried her face in the man's chest, staining his blood-stained shirt with fresh tears. Thank you, she sobbed. Roderick froze for an instant. The physical contact with the girl from the supermarket, the girl he had despised hours earlier, disarmed him. He felt the small, fragile body shake against his. Slowly, awkwardly, Roderick wrapped his large arms around the girl, hugged her tightly, closed his eyes, and rested his chin on Valentina's dirty head. "Don't thank me," he whispered. "Forgive me." Julian joined the embrace. The 3 formed a human sculpture on the cold hospital floor, an emotionally ruined millionaire, a boy discovering reality, and a girl regaining hope. In that embrace, bank accounts and rags ceased to exist. There were only 3 hearts beating at the same rhythm of survival, the wall of bureaucracy. 2 days later, the morning sunlight streamed through the window of private room 405. It wasn't a normal hospital room. It looked like a hotel suite. There were fresh flowers on the nightstand, Egyptian cotton sheets, and a sofa bed where Roderick had spent the last 48 hours, snatching sleep, refusing to go home. Tess was awake. Weak, yes, but awake. The tube was no longer in her throat, only a transparent oxygen mask. Valentina sat on the bed, carefully brushing her grandmother's white hair. The girl was transformed. She no longer wore the rags from the supermarket. She wore a simple, clean blue dress and new shoes that Julian had personally chosen in the hospital shop. Roderick stood by the window, talking on a new phone his assistant had brought him. His posture was tense. "I told you to sell the shares, Mark," Roderick said, in a low but firm voice. "I don't care if the price dropped. I need liquidity. Now I want to buy the land in the northern settlement. Yes, all the land. Not to build a shopping center, you idiot. To clean it up, to urbanize it. No, I'm not going to kick anyone out. I'm going to give them deeds. Do it." He hung up, turned to the bed, and his face softened as he saw Tess smiling at Valentina. "You look better, Tess," Roderick said, approaching. "I feel like I've been run over by a lorry and then given a massage," she joked in a hoarse voice. "Rod, this is too much. This room, the nurses who come every 5 minutes, you're going to go broke. I have a lot of money, Tess, too much. And for the first time, I know what to spend it on," he replied, taking her hand. At that moment, the room door opened without a knock. It wasn't a nurse. It was a woman in her 50s, dressed in a severe grey suit, with a folder under her arm and an expression of bureaucratic efficiency that sent chills down one's spine. Behind her, 2 hospital security guards. Valentina stopped brushing her grandmother's hair. Street instinct told her this woman was dangerous. She pressed herself against Tess's side. "Good morning," the woman said without smiling. "I am Miss Davies from the Department of Social Services and Child Protection." Roderick straightened up, instinctively placing himself between the woman and the bed. "I don't recall calling you," Roderick said curtly. "The hospital reported the admission of a minor at risk accompanying an indigent patient in critical condition," the woman said, opening her folder and pulling out a pen. "We have reviewed the case. Mrs. Teresa Mendoza has no fixed address, no verifiable income, and her health is precarious." The woman looked at Valentina over her glasses. "The child is not in school, shows signs of chronic malnutrition, and lives in unsanitary conditions. The state assumes immediate custody." Valentina let out a whimper and grabbed her grandmother's arm. Tess tried to sit up, but she was too weak. "No," Tess said, her voice choked. "Don't take her. She's my granddaughter. "Madam, you can't even look after yourself," Miss Davies retorted coldly. "The child will be transferred to Maplewood Children's Home No. 4 until her legal situation is determined. Officers, please proceed." The two guards took a step forward. Valentina began to cry, terrified. "Roderick," the girl cried, looking at the man who had promised to be her shield. Roderick felt a cold fury rise up his back. It wasn't the impulsive fury of the supermarket. It was the calculating fury of a man who knows he has power and is willing to use it. "Stop." Roderick's voice cracked like a whip. The guards halted. "Miss," Davies looked at him with annoyance. "Sir, do not interfere. This is a legal procedure. If you obstruct authority." Roderick walked slowly towards her, invading her personal space. He was tall, imposing, and though dressed in casual clothes, he emanated an authority that made the official take a step back. "You are not taking anyone," Roderick said with terrifying calm. "Listen closely, Miss Davies. You say Mrs. Mendoza has no address. That is false. Her address is Oak Lane, Montalvo Manor. It is my residence." The woman blinked, confused. "What are you saying?" "I am saying that Mrs. Teresa is my foster mother," Roderick lied with perfect fluency. "And the child, Valentina, is under my direct protection." "That is not in any document," Miss Davies stammered, looking at her papers. "It says here they were found in an informal settlement." "An administrative error that my lawyers are already correcting," Roderick interrupted. "In fact, my solicitor is on his way with temporary custody documents signed by the grandmother, granting me legal guardianship of the minor and medical responsibility for the lady." Roderick took out his wallet and extracted a card. "And I suggest, Miss Davies, that before you try to touch that child, you call your boss, the Regional Director of Social Services. He's a good friend of mine. Ask him if he wants a lawsuit for harassment and abuse of authority against a family who is paying for a private suite in this hospital." Miss Davies looked at the card, then at Roderick, and finally at the luxurious room. She knew when she had lost a battle. The system was designed to crush the poor, not to fight against millionaires. She closed her folder with a sharp snap. "If you submit the documents before 5:00 p.m., we will halt the transfer. But we will be monitoring Mr. Montalvo. Any irregularities? There won't be any." "Good morning," Roderick said, gesturing towards the door. The woman turned and left, followed by the guards. Silence returned to the room. Valentina was still hugging Tess, trembling. Roderick turned to them. He exhaled a long sigh, releasing the tension. "Is it true?" Tess asked, looking at him with watery eyes. "You told them we live with you?" Roderick walked to the bed and sat on the edge. He took Valentina's hand, which still wore the red thread bracelet. "I didn't lie to them, Tess. I just told them the truth in advance." Roderick looked at the girl. "I promised you I would be your shield. A shield is useless if it stays put away. You're coming to live at home. You and Tess. Julian is already preparing the guest room. He says he needs someone to teach him how to play proper football. Because I'm a disaster." Valentina looked at him incredulously. "What if I'm naughty?" she asked, with the insecurity of someone who has always been rejected. Roderick smiled and stroked her cheek, wiping away a tear. "Then I'll punish you by taking away your dessert, like a daughter. But never, listen closely, never will I kick you out into the street. That door is closed forever, Valentina. Now, you are a Montalvo, and Montalvos look after their own." Tess closed her eyes, and 2 tears rolled down her wrinkled cheeks. She had waited 30 years. She had suffered unspeakably. But seeing that man, the boy she once fed, become the father her granddaughter needed, she knew all the pain had been worth it. The circle had closed, the red thread had worked. The end of the thread, resolution and legacy. Scene 1. The exit from the White Labyrinth. 3 weeks later, the midday sun struck the glass facade of the Metropolitan Clinic. But this time, the light did not seem cold or distant. It seemed a blessing. The automatic doors opened with a soft hiss, and Roderick emerged, pushing a wheelchair. In the chair sat Tess, no longer the bundle of dying bones who had entered that fateful night. Although still thin and with sparse white hair, there was color in her cheeks. She wore a soft lavender wool outfit that Roderick had bought for her, and on her lap rested a newly knitted blanket. But most importantly, it was her gaze. Her honey-colored eyes no longer sought death, but absorbed every detail of the world with avidity. By her side walked Valentina. The transformation was complete, not only because of the floral dress or the shiny patent leather shoes, but because of her posture. She no longer walked hunched over, expecting a blow or a shout. She walked with her chin held high, holding Julian's hand, who carried his new sister's backpack with protective pride. "Are you sure you paid for everything, Rod?" Tess asked for the 10th time, turning her head back. "I don't want a bill to arrive. I don't even have money for chewing gum." Roderick let out a genuine laugh, a sound his office employees wouldn't recognize. "It's all paid for, Tess, and what isn't, we'll invent it. Forget about money. Your only job now is to breathe and put on a little weight. You weigh less than a sigh." The valet parking brought the car. It was no longer the two-seater sports sedan. It was a spacious, safe family SUV. Roderick had traded his speed toy for a vehicle that could fit everyone. As he helped Tess into the passenger seat with extreme delicacy, Valentina paused on the pavement. She looked back, towards the city, towards the direction of the dark alley. Roderick noticed the pause, closed Tess's door, and knelt beside the girl. "What are you looking at?" he asked softly. "Never again," Valentina whispered, pointing towards the gray horizon of the poor neighborhoods. "Really, I'll never again have to look for food in the rubbish." Roderick took her hands. He felt the red thread bracelet on the girl's wrist, the infinity knot brushing his fingers. "Look at me, Valentina." He waited for her dark eyes to connect with his. "Before you go hungry again, I will stop breathing. It's a blood promise, never again." Valentina nodded, and a shy but real smile illuminated her face. She got into the car. Julian jumped in after her. "I call the window!" the boy shouted. "No, I do," Valentina replied, laughing. It was the sound of a recovered childhood. Roderick closed the door, took a deep breath of the city air, and got behind the wheel. He wasn't going to a meeting, he was going home. Scene 2, Justice in Aisle 4. But before going to the mansion, Roderick had a stop to make. "Where are we going, Dad?" Julian asked, seeing Roderick take the turn towards the shopping center. "Home is the other way." "We have an important purchase to make, son," Roderick said, with a determined look in the rearview mirror. "Something we left unfinished." The SUV stopped in front of the same supermarket where everything had begun. The neon sign flickered under the sun. Valentina tensed in the back seat. The memory of the cashier's humiliating shouts was still fresh. "Don't be afraid," Roderick said, turning off the engine. "This time it's different. Let's go." They all got out. Roderick pushed Tess's wheelchair. They entered through the automatic doors, the air conditioning, the smell of the bakery, the hum of the tills. The setting was the same, but the actors had changed roles. Roderick walked directly towards the dairy aisle. His leather shoes resonated with authority. People moved aside, not out of disgust this time, but because of the magnetic presence emanating from the group. They reached the shelf. Roderick took not 1 but 10 tins of the most expensive powdered milk, the same one Valentina had tried to buy. He filled the trolley with food, chocolates, fruit, toys, everything a child would dream of. Then he headed to the tills. He scanned. There she was, the same cashier. The woman with the bitter face was still chewing gum and scanning products disdainfully. Roderick lined up in her queue. Julian and Valentina clung to his legs. Tess watched in silence, understanding what Roderick was doing. When it was his turn, Roderick began to place the tins on the conveyor belt. The cashier looked up, bored. "Do you have a loyalty card?" she asked mechanically. Then she stopped, looked at Valentina, recognized the eyes, looked at Roderick, recognized the man in the suit, though he now wore jeans and a polo shirt, and looked at the old woman in the wheelchair. The color drained from the woman's face. The chewing gum stopped in her mouth. "You," she stammered. "Good afternoon," Roderick said with icy politeness. "I've come to pay a debt." The cashier swallowed hard, looking sideways, searching for security, searching for an escape. "Sir, I was just doing my job. The rules state that I'm not here to complain about your rules," Roderick interrupted. He pulled out his platinum card, the same one that had gleamed that day. "I've come to finish the transaction you interrupted. Charge everything." The trembling woman scanned the products. The beeping of the machine sounded like a countdown. It's 300 pounds, she said weakly. Roderick paid, but didn't move. He turned to the long queue of people waiting behind him. Hard-working people, mothers with children, elderly people counting coins. "Listen, everyone." Roderick raised his voice. The supermarket fell silent. 3 weeks ago, at this very till, a child cried from hunger, and no one did anything. I did nothing. We all looked the other way. Roderick looked at the cashier, who wanted to sink beneath the counter. Poverty is not a crime, and indifference is the worst disease. Today I want to celebrate that my family is alive. Roderick looked at the manager who had come out of his office at the commotion. "Manager," Roderick called. "Close the tills." "Excuse me?" the man in the cheap tie asked, confused. I said, "Close the tills. Everyone in this supermarket right now. Their bill. I'll pay it." A murmur of disbelief swept through the place. "Everyone?" asked a lady with a trolley full of nappies. "Everyone," Roderick affirmed. "With one condition." He turned to the cashier. "That the next time someone can't pay for a child's milk, you remember this moment, and remember that dignity has no price." The cashier bowed her head, utterly ashamed. Tears of humiliation welled in her eyes. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry." Valentina, letting go of Roderick's leg, approached the counter. She took one of the chocolate bars Roderick had bought and extended it towards the cashier. "Here," the girl said with disarming innocence. "You seem sad. My grandma says chocolate cures sadness." The girl's gesture was the final blow. The cashier burst into tears, covering her face with her hands. The manager, red with embarrassment, nodded at Roderick. The people in the queue began to applaud. It wasn't a movie applause. It was a spontaneous, human applause. Roderick didn't smile arrogantly. He simply took the handle of Tess's wheelchair. "Let's go home," he said. Scene 3. The warmth of home. Epilogue. 1 year later, the garden of Montalvo Manor was unrecognizable. Where once there had been meticulously cut lawn and cold marble statues that no one looked at, now there was a chaos of life. There was a misplaced football goal, bicycles lying on the grass, and a long wooden table under the shade of a century-old oak. It was Sunday. The air smelled of barbecue and laughter. Roderick stood in front of the grill with an apron that read, "The Boss," stained with sauce. He no longer wore a watch. His wrist was adorned by only one thing, a red thread bracelet, worn from use, with an infinity knot. "Dad, Valentina fouled me," Julian cried, running across the lawn, his face red with effort. He had grown. He was stronger, happier. "Liar." Valentina ran behind him, laughing heartily. Her hair, once dull and matted, now shone under the sun, long and well cared for, tied with a red ribbon. She tripped over her own feet. "Referee," Roderick shouted, raising a spatula. "Play fair, or you'll lose your burger." At the table under the shade, Tess sat like a queen. She had regained weight. Her wrinkles were still there, but they were no longer furrows of suffering, but maps of a life that had found safe harbor. She was knitting. Her hands, though slower, had not lost their magic. "Stop scolding them, Rod," she said, smiling. "Let them run. Children need to wear out the soles of their shoes. That's what they're for." Roderick approached the table and poured her a glass of fresh lemonade. He kissed her on the forehead. "Are you all right, Mum?" he asked. "I'm better than ever, son." Tess put down her knitting needles on the table. "You know, I was thinking." Roderick became serious for a moment. The memory always hurt a little, like an old scar. "I think about that sometimes too, how close I was to losing everything, to losing you, to losing myself." Tess took Roderick's hand, caressing the red bracelet on his wrist. "But you didn't lose us, because the thread stretches, it gets tangled, but it never breaks." Tess looked towards the garden where Julian and Valentina tumbled on the grass, laughing hysterically. "Look at that, Rod. That's what you built, not your company's building or your bank accounts." "That," Roderick looked at the children. Valentina, the girl who had been invisible to the world, now shone with her own light. She went to school, got the best marks in maths, and, according to her teachers, had a gift for leadership. Julian, who had been destined to be a rich, lonely child, now had a compassionate heart and a sister he would die for. "I know," Roderick said, his throat tight. "I'm the richest man in the world, and it has nothing to do with the bank." The doorbell rang. The butler, who now smiled much more often, appeared in the garden. "Mr. Roderick, the guests for the charity gala have arrived." Roderick nodded. He took off his apron. That night, they were inaugurating the Teresa Mendoza Foundation, a comprehensive shelter for homeless families. It wasn't a cold orphanage, it was a home, a place where no one would have to return milk. "Let's go," Roderick said. "Wait," Valentina said, running up, gasping. "Dad, your shoelace is untied. You can't go out to give your speech like that." The girl knelt on the lawn, not caring about staining her new dress, and tied Roderick's laces deftly. Roderick looked down at her. He saw the crown of her head. He remembered the day in the supermarket when he looked at her with contempt from his height. Now he looked at her with absolute devotion. Valentina stood up and dusted her hands. "Done. Now you look like a president." Roderick bent down and hugged her. It was a long, strong hug. "Thank you, daughter. For tying your shoe?" she asked, surprised. "For saving my life," he whispered in her ear. Roderick stood up, took Julian's hand, and Valentina's hand. Tess advanced with her walker. She hardly used the chair anymore. Together, they walked towards the house. The camera slowly pulls away, rising towards the blue sky, revealing the garden full of life. The image fades to black, but before disappearing, a final close-up appears. Roderick's wrist holding Valentina's hand. The red thread shines under the sun. The infinity knot is firm. No one is so poor that they cannot give a hug, nor so rich that they do not need one.